Neal, actually Tim Neal. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's a joy, a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to start at the top. For folks who may be hearing the phrase parts work for the first time, what is it?
Well, I remember back to when I was 12. This is the first time, of course, I didn't have the language then, but this was the first time that I really felt a part of me come out. And I walked into my lounge room at the time, and mum was sitting there on the couch, and I wasn't well. I was sick. I was ill. And all I wanted was a hug or just to sit on the couch with mum and watch TV. And I threw a tantrum, and she just looked at me in what I perceived as like disgust. And I stomped and ran out of the lounge room and went to my bedroom. And I remember falling to my knees and with tears coming down my face. I just felt so alone. And this part of me came up, this rageful, angry part. And I remember as I was crying, the voice within me said, I will never fucking do this again. This is weak. And then in that moment, this part started leading my life. And I didn't cry or express anger. I have much emotionality at all for the next 15 to 20 years. And that was my first instance into parts work. Now, fast forward many years, there's language and there's models and we can dig into that. However, as it's sort of written, parts work is there's many parts of us, and it comes from Dr. Richard Swartz. Actually, he was a family therapist based out, I think, Chicago, Illinois. And back in the 80s, he started knowing and understanding that a lot of his patients were coming in and talking this language of parts. A part of me wants to do this. A part of me wants to do that. Perhaps you guys can relate. I know I could. And he started using this and created this model known as IFS, internal family systems. And then over the years, I blended IFS and also shadow work, which I'm sure you guys are well aware of, into this model of parts work and helping guys really create freedom and peace within.
I'm going to jump in really quickly because you brought it up, and I think a lot of people listening are going to be familiar with shadow work, or they may have heard it. And to me, I always felt like shadow work was a slice of parts work. It always felt like the parts of me that I was trying so hard to not look at or to not let anyone else look at. So I want to throw it back at you and ask, do you think that shadow work, as we understand it, is one slice of parts work? Because my understanding is that parts work can also be great parts, the hardworking part, the loving part, the nurturing part, and the lonely part, the scared part, the, whatever part. And so to me, it always felt like shadow work was a slice. Do you also see it that way? And if not, how do you see it?
Yeah, great insight, Tim. I do see it that way. And as I started looking into and experiencing path work within myself, I realized like my first introduction to shadow work was after a really hard breakup back in 2017. And I started reading the book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. Incredible book. Yeah. And she started talking of shadow and these parts of us that exactly what you were saying, like just feel perhaps less than the darker side, those parts of us that we've been too afraid of to actually move into and express. And that helped liberate me. So I see it as shadow is a part of parts work, and more so there's the darkness of the shadow. So I loved how you mentioned, Tim, that there's also the positive side or the light side of our parts, and they've always got positive intent, of course, our parts trying to protect us, and there's different sort of fragments of parts, and shadow is just one of those.
So I want to get curious a little bit about that moment as a boy when you're back in your bedroom and you hear this part of yourself basically being born, this part that is saying never again, and how that part stuck with you for so many years and kind of held a presence in your life. that was prohibitive to your expression of emotion. So that part of you, how did that part evolve over time? And did it serve a purpose?
Absolutely, it did. So as I grew into a teenager and a young man, that part, and we'll call that um, the part of just feeling like vulnerability, because that's what I felt I was at my most vulnerable. And then my primary caretaker would shut it down, let's call it. So vulnerability became this part of me that was just in the shadows, just like I can't be vulnerable, can't express anger. So I was closed to anger. I can't express sadness, and it was all wrapped in shame. So I went on with my life, and this other part came in, known as the achievement part, the perfectionist. Let me do everything right.
I know him.
Mhm.
Yeah, many men know him very well. Uh, and then I just achieved. I just achieved my way through high school, through young adulthood, achieve, especially in the sporting realm. That was my sort of go to. Uh, and it really had positive intent and served me. I achieved some great things. Uh, However, in my mid 20s, actually, I had been into like personal development on some level, like, and it started all with like a gratitude journal. I heard something somewhere in my mid teens, and it was all performance based. So that part, that achievement part, that wanted to perform really well, I was like, oh, this gratitude journal thing, I've heard this can help. Let me get grateful and write stuff down. And so I had quite an early indoctrination into sort of personal development or self improvement, but it was predicated on not being enough. It wasn't until my mid 20s. I remember me and two buddies were in Melbourne, Australia, and Tony Robbins was coming to Australia, and he was going to be in Sydney, which is about 10 hours away, short hour and a half, 2 hour plane flight. Until my buddies and I got tickets. And we went there and we sat in the room, and for 4 hours, he just blew the ceiling off. I was like, holy shit. Then he had his next program coming up, and my two buddies bought tickets to that. And at the time, I was stuck in these limiting beliefs. I was working in fitness, full time in fitness, and I couldn't justify the time off work and the money to go up to Sydney, and not, let alone the event ticket. So I was like, no, you guys go. And about a week before the event, one of my buddies comes to me and says, I can't go. I've got something on. I really can't go. Will you take my ticket? And I was like, no, I can't. It's too much and this and that. He said, look, take the ticket. Just pay me whatever you can later. And I sat with that, and something within me said, I just need to go. So I went with a group of friends, and that event shifted everything. And it shifted one thing in particular. I'm sitting there on the floor, like, and Tony Robbins walks straight past me, and he's this huge guy. Huge guy. He's got this aura, he's got this presence, and love him or hate him, he's got presence and an energy about him. And he stood about 10 feet away from me, and I was looking at this giant of a man, and he was talking about his wife and his relationship. And tears were just streaming down his face, no different than that 12-year-old boy. But he had a presence, and he wasn't afraid of his vulnerability. And in that moment, what happened was something within me woke up, and it said, that's real strength.
Mm.
Not this closed off, walled off, emotionless, stoic young man that had been showing up for the last 15 years. And that gave myself permission. A new role model was formed for me to step further into. And then over the years, obviously, I've become my own man and done a lot of work in with Tony and the teams there. And that's a beautiful part of my journey. But that was a pivotal moment in my developmentation.
I'd like to ask you, thank you for sharing that story. It does feel to me like one of the biggest challenges that people, but in this case men, are facing is this want or desire or expectation that we are one thing. So I am an accomplished man who is X, Y, and Z, and I have this idea. And so when we aren't able to maintain that or achieve that at all times, we start to crumble. And it feels like parts work is a recognition of a vast landscape of possibility for each person, and that I can be both strong. Maybe I'm naturally strong at work, or I'm naturally strong at whatever, activity I enjoy. And then in other places, I am less so. And I can have this sort of nuanced personal landscape of my life. Can you talk a little bit about that? The idea that maybe there's a pressure to be one thing, and the value that we can get if we recognize all the things that we might be simultaneously.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you're bringing in, Tim, because I often say we are all things. Again, something I learned from that book, Dark Side Light Chasers. We are all things. And when I read that, I thought, what does that actually mean? And then over time, bringing in parts, it makes so much sense. I was in a coaching session the other day working with a man, and he kept on referring to himself as, I'm just so anxious, I'm just so anxious, I'm just so anxious. And I paused, held space for that, paused and said, how does it feel when you say a part of me is anxious? All this lightness was like, wow, just a part of me. And this comes from what Dr. Schwartz realized, that often we refer to ourselves in what's known as the mono mind, which is a one mind.
Mm,
To your point,
yeah.
I am just one thing.
I
But
never wait, but I just gotta stop and say, like,
yeah,
I hadn't heard that concept. And for our listeners, like, Tim and I have been working together and known each other for what, 4 years now?
right.
We haven't talked about this, so I wasn't queuing you up, but I love that there's this thing. Okay, so keep going, please. I'm
Yeah.
feeling excited now. Yeah.
So instead of referring to ourselves in the mono mind, and I've done this and I still do this, I'm on this path. However, whenever we pattern interrupt with a part of me, that gives us space to know that it's actually, we're multiple minded. We're not just one thing. We're
Mm.
not just always grateful. We're not just always calm and present. However, we're not just always angry or shameful or fearful. So that in itself allows space and a healthy self acceptance of we are all things. Now, let's not forget we have free will. We can make choice. And that's where our real humanness comes in. So I like to look at it. One is more of a human conversation, what we're experiencing and sensing in this reality right now. But then as we develop and as we grow, we start to have access for, let's just call it more the spiritual realm. And that's where oneness comes back in. So I try to balance both because I
Mm.
love being in this physical world, but I also, there's nothing quite like when you're just deeply connected to something bigger than ourselves, call it spirit, energy, God, whatever label we want to put on it.
So I definitely want us to go deeper into the spiritual aspect that you're talking about. But before we do, you mentioned something that I really like, which is the pattern interrupt. So can you speak a little bit for people who don't know, what is a pattern interrupt? Why is it valuable? And how does it um how is it included in embodiment work and men's work as we have engaged in it?
Great question. So briefly, a pattern interrupt is this interrupting a pattern that the mind is so used to performing familiar. So an example may be, let's just say, back when I was mid 20s, young man, I had this goal and dream to go overseas and become a ski instructor because I grew up on the ski slopes here in Australia. We do have a few hills here, and I just wanted to go over to Canada and ski because I loved it, freedom. So I went over there and did a year in Vancouver. It was magic, loved it. It was really challenging also. And as I taught skiing, as you ski or snowboard, what happens to the snow, right? Your skis and snowboards make a groove in the snow. And then if you keep going down the hill in those grooves, it gets easier and easier and easier. Neural pathways in our brain are exactly the same thing.
You said neural pathways in the
Yeah.
neural pathways in the brain are the same as the grooves in the snow. Yeah.
Yeah. What we fire, so if we keep skiing in those grooves, it wires together stronger and stronger and stronger, neuroscience. So the good news is then we can also pattern interrupt. over time. So if we have a belief, let's say, which is nothing more than a thought of certainty or a thought that we believe to be true, and we've fired and wired that, usually for many years, from those imprint years from 2 to 7, then first is the awareness of, is this belief or is this thought or is this part really serving? And if so, how? Because there's always a positive payoff. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. So the interrupt is a real self-discovery and a self-awareness piece of growth, of just understanding, ideally with compassion, ideally with curiosity, not from that real strong inner critic, which most of us have, on, there's a pattern here, and usually patterns come out in behaviors that I can start to interrupt, or this part that I can start to integrate more beautifully within me through interrupting patterns of thought and or being and belief.
Very interesting. So, if I'm understanding correctly, and if we use the example of you as a young man who is seeing Tony Robbins give you this new model
Mm.
of masculinity, of like there's a strong man in front of me with presence who is also demonstrating vulnerability, that what it sounds like was a pattern interrupt to the part of you that was leading your life predominantly, which was this stoic, suppressed emotion version of yourself. And so, through that pattern interrupt of seeing this new example, did a new part of you start to come online, or were you able to work with that stoic part of you in a different way? So that's where I'm a little curious about, like, how does this start to work, so that as we shift and evolve and go through our personal growth, like how do these parts work together, and how do we acknowledge them and honor them at the same time?
Mm. So there was a pattern interrupt for sure, because the old belief was vulnerability is weakness, and I can't cry and I can't emote. The external, through this role model, interrupted that pattern of thought, but also that part. They're much, much the sameness. And a new belief started to be formed like, oh, this is vulnerability and strength all in one. So then that part of me that was online started to relax. And an incredibly important part of parts work is understanding that our parts are there to serve us, usually to protect. There's two types of parts generally. One is more protective, and the other parts are more vulnerable, known as protectors or managers, and exiles. And our exiles are the ones that the protectors are protecting. The managers are sort of managing all our life and our behaviors to protect these young, vulnerable parts within us.
I just want to go back to the example then. The part of you in the story you told about when you were not feeling well and looking for your mom, there was a part of you that wanted to be cared for, wanted to be nurtured, wanted to be sheltered, whatever, would that part of you is in the exile slice. Am I right? And then
Yes.
the part of you that changed, that recognized what was helping, what was serving, what was protecting you, that became the protector. So is that, am I hearing you right?
Spot on.
Right.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt,
So
but I wanted to make
no,
clear because it felt like there were many parts in that story that were collaborating in the experience of your life.
yeah, but you nailed it, Tim. The young part, the vulnerable part that just wanted to be loved and held and comforted came forth. And often we have, and this is where trauma comes in. Trauma is often what has happened, but what didn't happen as well. So I didn't get the love, the comfort, what I needed. So that exiled, it gets exiled. That's where the name comes. It gets exiled. A protector is born. This isn't happening again. I'll protect you.
Okay, I'm going to jump in because you and I have not talked about this, but I am curious now. Would you argue that they often come in pairs?
Yeah, well, now you're getting deeper into parts. But I love
I
it.
mean,
There's
Let's
listen,
go.
this is why we have you here. Like, because it seems to me then I can think of so many experiences in my own life and in the story that you just so beautifully illustrated, where one did not exist without the other. Like Oh, the creation of one was to serve the other. So, and you're smiling. So I'm assuming that maybe I'm intuiting a thing that many people who are more familiar with parts work already know. Am I right?
There's always a polarity, of course, light and dark,
Beautifully said.
and they both are beautiful and serve. So, two things about parts work that have really helped me in understanding and really crucial. One is that it's not about getting rid of parts. Often I hear guys say, I just need to get rid of this, or there's so much criticism towards a part of them. Maybe it's a part that's not productive, maybe it's a part that's more vulnerable, maybe it's a part that we don't like. It's caused us pain. So the first is it's not about getting rid of parts. It's actually about healthily integrating those parts. And I love how Schwartz talks about often you think of think of a smoothie, it's all blended together. We're not going for that. We're going for the fruit salad and really honoring each part for the part of us that they have been, but also coming into a healthy integration and not allowing those parts to lead. Those parts are with us. That's what's called internal family systems. They're families. We're not getting rid of family members. We're just learning how to beautifully dance with those parts.
How to be all
And
things.
yeah, exactly.
We're
And the
not
second,
we're not just the grapes. We're not just the watermelon. We are all the parts. We are all things.
absolutely. Now, you may have preference. You might like the grapes more, the watermelon. I know I like pineapple, probably the
Mm.
most. But can we come into that healthy integration? Which brings me to knowing this could be a good sort of move into the spiritual realm here is there's the centered self. I call it the centered self. It's known as capital S self. That's that place within you. It's not a part that was there when we're born, that can never die. Our beingness, another way, the spirit within. And what I've witnessed within my own life, within many men's lives, is when we touch in on that part, the centered self, let's call it that for clarity's sake, our centered self just knows. Our centered self is characterized by these beautiful qualities, calmness and courage and compassion, a few others. And that is where, and if there is a goal, the goal is constant evolution in my world. However, if there was a goal, is to live more from that place, the
Mm.
centered self.
I'm going to go back because I believe that we live in a world currently where the desire is to identify a problem and then eliminate it, solve it. So when you said it's not the goal for us to get rid of a part, I think it's really important. So I want to come back because there, I think, is a tendency for us to want to, oh, that part, that lonely part of me. Well, you're the problem. I just need to if I just get rid of you, my problem is gone. And the analogy that's popping up for me is the sprained ankle and the swelling. And we've all seen this so many times. Be like, I have to get the swelling down. The swelling, the problem, swelling is the problem. We have to ice it. You have to like ibuprofen. We do whatever the thing is. But the swelling is actually part of the healing. The swelling is a part of the process that we have culturally come to think of as like not good. When in reality, that's what our body is doing to help heal the problem that is happening. And so it feels the same way to be like this part of me that is lonely, or the part of me that is scared, or the part of me, and by recognizing it as a part of our process and our healing, we can approach it in a very different way. So I wanted to reiterate that because it isn't you're the problem and I get rid of you, because then that to me feels like it takes us away from what you just spoke about, the centered self. And rather, if we think of it as an integral part of our process, then instead of getting rid of the lonely part, I can recognize, oh, you're here for a reason. I can get curious about it. Well, why? Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? I don't need you to leave. I need to know why you're here. And then I have to imagine, this is my question to you now, is that exploration and curiosity around these parts of us that we may feel tempted to want to eliminate a manner in which we can get closer to our centered self?
Absolutely. Short answer is yes. I love your analogy of the ankle. And to go that and take that a step further, often I know I have, and I know many men treat the ankle and go, the ankle's a problem, let's cut it off. Let's eliminate. Let's just cut off the ankle. What?
Yeah.
What if we understand the ankle? What's really happening there? Is there anything underlying that's causing dysfunction in the ankle?
Yeah.
Let's heal. Let's heal with the ankle, with that part of us. Now that we've got a new awareness, and I have this really strong part, and I've done a lot of work on it, that's the inner critic, really hard on myself, incredibly hard on myself. Remember as a teenager, I'd look in the mirror and I would despise and hate what I saw.
Mm,
The dark features, the acne, I would just look with disdain. That was my inner critic. That was that part that was born, that protector. Now, I've learned to love that part of me. Does he still pop up at times? Absolutely. And that's where awareness and some emotional mastery is needed to come inwards. What I call meet that part.
mm,
Yeah,
So I just heard you say emotional mastery. And
yeah.
so working with parts does require a little bit of awareness, right? We have to be aware that there is this part of us, and then also the emotional intelligence and capacity to be able to sit with a part and bring in compassion, bring in curiosity, these things that do require a heightened emotional intelligence, be able to sit with them. So, how do you use that emotional intelligence, that emotional mastery to work with a part that may not be the favorable part, right? Again, we're not trying to eliminate it. We're not trying to eliminate the critic. We're not trying to eliminate the stoic. We are trying to bring in curiosity. How? And then through that curiosity, how do we then manage that part? If we're not getting rid of the part, what do we do with the part?
Great questions. So I invite both of you, if you're interested
mm,
in practicing with this, it won't be long, but we want to meet our parts. And you mentioned, Eric, it takes a little bit of awareness. I would say it takes a lot of awareness. And in our busy modern world where we're overstimulated and there's so much out there, a lot of it incredible, I think it's mastery as a man. And I use that term loosely because can we ever master anything? Or do we just go to another level with it? I like to think of progress over perfection because mastery in my world can mean perfection. I don't believe in that anymore. Another pattern interrupt, by the way. So the awareness piece is, to me, men's work 101. How aware are we in any given moment? How much presence and awareness can we bring to this moment? My internal world, which we're talking about, parts, and also an integration of the external. That's a beautiful part of life. So let's go to the how and meet that part. So take a moment, just go inwards. Deepen your breath, that helps. And just notice within you if there's a part that's a little bit more alive or a part you want to work with. Is it that inner critic? Is it the stoic or a judgmental part? Is there more of a afraid part? There's no right or wrong here. You may feel it in your body, you may feel it in your mind. They come through as visions, sensations. Just sense. And if you've got a part that you want to work with in this moment, just raise your hand so I can see it.
I mean, I have my director part is pretty loud right now.
Director.
Thinking
Great.
about thinking about all the things that are currently happening in this moment. What part is yours?
Mine's the inner critic. Anytime I'm
Yeah.
sitting in this chair, there is a part of me that is so hyper aware of messing up, saying the wrong thing, looking stupid.
So go ahead and just focus in on that inner critic and that director. Just notice where that part may live within you. Is it in mind or it is in body? And the best that you can. Just notice how you feel towards that part. If there's a judgment or not. If there's a judgment, like you want to get rid of it, just go ahead and ask that part to step aside. Reassure that part if it's there. You just want to get to know this part, this director or inner critic. Now see if you can just bring some curiosity, some compassion to this part of you that may be critical or directive.
Mm.
Then if you found that curiosity and compassion, just go ahead and ask it like you would another person, perhaps a small child. Go ahead and ask it, why does it love to do what it's doing within you? Why is it doing that? Just listen. Notice if that part is willing to talk or give you anything. If it does, it's great. You've got some trust, and if it doesn't, that's okay too. Go ahead and ask it, what does it fear most? What's it really afraid of? Saying as curious and compassionate as you can. What's it afraid of?
My director part is actually a really positive part of me.
Mm,
And it's fear. What I just intuited was afraid of wasting people's time.
mm,
So it wants to be really mindful about how we're doing the podcast and the sound and the technology and your time and Eric's time and, our listeners' time. Um, that's what popped up for me. Came for
mm,
you.
The first thing is that my inner critic is here to protect. He's here to protect me from looking stupid.
mm,
And there is a fear with it of letting people down.
mm. So go ahead and let that part know that that makes sense
Totally.
and thank it for doing what an incredible job within you. Not wanting to waste people's time, not wanting to look stupid, protecting you in this space and perhaps others. Go ahead and ask it, if you, being centered self here, holding compassion and curiosity, if you could do something to support it, what would that be?
My part is inviting me to celebrate or acknowledge it.
Mm,
The director part of me.
yeah.
This is actually a moment for me because I'm working with a positive or less charged, more socially acceptable part. So,
Mm,
and I'm curious to hear what you.
This is something that I worked on for the last week while on retreat is trust. So the thing that I can do that would be most supportive to this inner critic is to trust, trust others, trust myself, to allow him to rest.
mm,
That would be supportive. If I could just take that leap and say, I trust that as long as I'm doing something that is truly me, whether I make a mistake or not, doesn't matter. I can trust that other people will not judge me in such a critical way that I'm gonna like not belong or that I'm gonna do something irreparable. And my actions aren't gonna be so inconsequential. So
mm.
can I trust that and allow the critic to rest?
Beautiful. So go ahead and celebrate and thank that part within you for sharing that. And let it know that you're here for it. Yeah. And that you can revisit any time. You just finally just see how it reacts or responds to that. Your acceptance perhaps, your curiosity, your compassion.
I'd like to acknowledge that First of all, Tim, thank you for leading us through that. And I'd like to acknowledge that it is a process you have led me through numerous times and, on our one-on-one sessions. And I understand the power of it. I understand the impact that it has. And then I just got to observe Eric also working through it. So that's incredible. And we are all men who are like deeply steeped in the work.
Mm.
So if you're a man who's new to the work and you are interested in connecting or beginning to understand these aspects of ourselves, these parts of ourselves, and wanting to utilize that to, greater self-understanding and deeper, more authentic engagement in the world, but you maybe aren't as practiced, is the first step simply the recognition and if of the existence of these parts? And if not, what would you say is the first step for someone who wants to understand better?
Yeah. The first step is just the recognition, the awareness of, And I always like to guys newer to the work is experiment with it. You know you best. Experiment with it. Sit with yourself more often. So create some sort of meditative practice, even if it's for 2 or 3 minutes like we did just now. And try this on. See if you feel any different parts within you. That's the first step. So it's the discipline.
I'm
Go ahead.
going to pause you there though and say, okay, so like I'm thinking about my dad now, but like really nuts and bolts. Someone's in the car and they have some version of road rage, right?
Mm.
They're something happens and they're having an emotional experience. What question do you recommend them asking, either in that moment or shortly thereafter, in reflection of that moment, to begin this process?
Yeah. By that pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your dad or my dad?
Wait,
All dads.
my biological father had and my stepdad, they both loved like road rage, which I find perplexing. I have gotten angry in the car on rare occasions, but in those occasions only when it was really merited. So I'm like, oh, that person didn't use a turn signal. Like, why are you so upset?
Mm.
Like, so upset. What we've learned in our men's group that it is a wildly shared experience. Lots of people,
Absolutely.
I forget what the topic was in that circle, but men were laughing because it was such a shared moment of like, I get so angry when someone cuts me off. I get so angry when they don't use their signal so I feel like road rage is a place where we can all sort of come together.
It's a great real life example, and I often have used it. Why don't I live in the city anymore? So I call it the chocolate cake analogy. If you don't want to eat chocolate cake, don't buy chocolate cake and have it sitting on the counter. Period.
Unless you're a masochist.
Exactly.
There are
Which
there
hopefully,
are people that does work for them where they're like, I'm going to have it in my house and I'm going to conquer it. It's going to stare me in the
yeah,
face and I'm going to sit with this discomfort.
That feels like a different episode.
That's a different episode. We'll bring Mr. R back on.
Yeah.
And Eric, I'm curious, what part's that?
Part of that. It's my inner sicko.
Yeah,
My dark, sexually twisted, part. That one.
masochist.
Yeah.
Coming back to road rage. The question, one, it's an awareness of, right? So this is where separation is really important in parts work and building your awareness and the practice of that. No different than going to the gym. We don't just go to the gym, do one workout and go, we're in shape and we feel great now. We show up for ourselves consistently. So for our dads, if we're in the car, and I grew up with my dad driving and his road rage, and I used to really judge it. And you should tell him what to do, and there's no need to shout, and there's, you're part of the problem, which I find just wild, right? We're a part of the problem being on the road, too much traffic, but we can't see that we're part of the problem. It's their fault. So there's another conversation around blaming and projection and whatnot. However, the question, to answer your question, Tim, firstly would be to breathe. So to get into the body Again, it all takes awareness. Without awareness, there's nothing, because we're just running past patterns. When this happens, I do this.
Right. We're in those deep ski grooves at that point.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Our dads are just cruising down the hill in the same tracks that they've made for the last 20, 30, 40 years. So the first step is to go, these tracks aren't serving. I don't want to road rage anymore. So there needs to be a desire. There needs to be something. And usually it's pain. That's what I've learned with men, especially.
It is usually pain.
Mm.
So pain can be a blessing in the fact that it will draw our attention to something that needs to change.
The swollen
Yes.
ankle.
Yeah.
And then a question that I'll throw in there is, which part of me is alive right now? I often ask that. Which part of me is alive? It's this real angry, rageful part. It's this shut down part. Road rage, of course. There's going to be an emotional expression of anger, let's call it, or at least frustration or agitation, rage on the other side. So it's interrupting that part's expression, the familiar expression, not necessarily healthy expression. Breath and the question of something like, which part of me is alive right now? And bringing in our centered self as quickly as possible. Again, this is a practice. It takes some time. It takes a repetition. It's that angry part. It's that annoyed part, whatever's most present. And then being with it as much as you can. Now, often, last part here is, often we're not in the moment. We can't sit there for 2-3 minutes and meet our parts. Right? We're not in this environment. We're not by ourselves. That's where a simple check-in really helps, I've found. I'll reconnect with you in time to come. No different than in great healthy communication with a partner or somebody who you care about. Time out. Hey, I'm not open or available for this right now. However, let's circle back in 2 hours or tomorrow or whatever's necessary. No different. So therefore, your part start to trust you more.
Mm.
You just got to show up. You got to sit with that part and go, hey, what was happening with the road rage today? Oh, I'm so fucking angry, like people cutting me off. I hear you. Compassion, curiosity, or calmness. Okay, what do you need in those moments from me? Well, I just need to know that you're not going to be such a pushover. Okay, I hear you. I've got it covered. Everything's okay. We're safe. I'm here.
You mentioned the familiar reaction, which feels like the pattern, the ski grooves, And I think what you're speaking to, which I really love, is this idea that, well, I could be in the car and I could have road rage. I could even identify as a person with road rage and I can have my reaction. But that same reaction, which often looks like anger, which is what I'm hearing you say, can come from so many different parts of us. So it could be the scared part. Oh, I thought we were about to get into an accident and there was a part of me that was scared. The right part, the part of me that knows you didn't do what we're supposed to do according to the traffic laws, and I have every right to be upset with you. So the part that's right. The frustrated part because I wanted you to know that I'm in a hurry because my boss just kept me 5 minutes late. And so I think the real genius here is recognizing, well, but the pattern of behavior and our reaction, our engagement in the world might be exactly the same in all of that. And so the work then becomes, okay, I had a reaction, but what was happening in me? And then it sounds like what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is, well, in that moment when I almost got into a car accident or I'm late because the person cut me off or I missed the light, whatever. And then coming back to it later with compassion and curiosity as just a recognition of that part's existence and likely the really valid part of that. So rather than approaching it with I shouldn't have this part or that part couldn't react, rather, oh, it is one of the parts. It would be sort of the same as like, oh, someone gives me great news, a loved one gives me great news, and I hug them. And then I judge myself for hugging them. Rather, I could say like, oh, like I can see, and so it becomes this practice of watching uh, a series of events unfold and then bringing curiosity and compassion to it. And with these moments, it's often looking at the parts that aren't serving us, or the patterns of behavior or the manners of engagement that aren't serving us. Um, the hug rarely is the problem, right? But the screaming in front of your kids or in front of your partner, or at another driver, might not be.
The part that might be bringing pain to others or pain to ourselves, a signal, Tim Neal, that you talked about, that like a recognition that like, oh, this is painful, whether to myself or to others. So now I'm recognizing it, that this is something that I maybe might want to bring some attention to.
Well said.
Yeah. And one thing you said that stood out was the existence of this part. All of our parts just want to know that we know that they're there and that they can relax. And a fantastic question, the more you do parts work, you realize that they've got positive intent. They're just doing their job, but they're young. Our parts are young. They were born like me when I was 12 and generally beforehand as well. And this is where some of what I call pivotal moments come in. We want to go back to some of the origins. We don't want to stay stuck there. And there's a whole process to unburden parts. But those younger parts are showing up in the car through road rage. They're behaving in the only way they know how, unless we reparent. So this is a reparenting process.
Mm.
And often, I'm at a friend's, a mate's birthday a few years ago, and one of the guys there is an NLP coach. And he comes up to me and goes, "Oh, how are you?" And just general chit chat. And he says, "You work with guys, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Like, how do you make guys like change? We're having a real hard job. Like, the women are easy, but the men." So, well, what I found is, generally speaking, women are more sort of growth, and they're not holding as much in terms of not wanting to change. We call it resistance. They have less sort of protective parts. They have their own challenges, but they're more open and growth, let's call it. He says, "Well, how do you make you guys change?" And I said, "I don't." And he looked at me blank. I was like, "What?" And I go, "Look, the truth of the matter and what I've experienced in my own journey and guys that I connect with, there needs to be pain, and often extreme pain. There needs to be divorce. I'm getting divorced. There needs to be I'm bankrupt. There needs to be I've got some disease or major health scare. And it really sucks." But rather than resisting that, I leant in and said, "Hey, I'm here for guys when they're at that point, when they're at their rock bottom." I had a buddy call me the other day, a few weeks ago, and said, "Look, I'm in a really bad spot with my marriage. Can you help me?" That was his rock bottom. I've been in my rock bottoms. When I came across path work, like the IFS model, I was really struggling in a relationship. I remember getting on this call with Dr. Dick Schwartz, the founder. There's a big group. There's like 100 men. It was a men's group, about 100. It's huge. I remember sitting there like, what is this? And he was just talking about parts, a lot about what we've spoken about today. And I left that call, and it wasn't a pivotal moment. It was like, that's interesting, because I wasn't at my pain threshold. I was on the way enough to open to like, oh, I want to be in group. I want to be with great brothers. I want to be able to sit in this space. Oh, there's some new information known as parts coming in. This is interesting. It wasn't until a couple of years later that it really landed for me. And it was like, this feels really good to my system. That's why I said before, I encourage men just to experiment. Does this feel like you want to lean in here? Is there a resonance here? And if there isn't, that's okay. You may not be at your pain point or timing. But if it is, then it, like anything, it takes effort, it takes awareness, it takes work, it takes a connection to it, more so than the connection to how you're currently behaving, the pain that is being brought up, the triggers that you're experiencing, which are our teachers. They don't always feel like that, but they are. And then to move forward, step into our personal power and move forward as a man, the best that you can. And I honestly believe that. I believe any brother or woman as well listening to this, you guys, me, we're all doing our best.
Mm.
We're doing our best.
I'm just going to jump in and say, the yogic perspective on like deities is that there are so many of them because the belief was that the concept of God was so big, so beyond the human mind that we have like thousands of different like incarnations, and it's meant to like find the one or the ones that resonate with you and work with them, but it's all getting, and now this conversation as we wrapping up, it feels like, oh, when we think about the entirety of each individual person, right? Our life experiences, our relationships, where we've come from and where we want to go to. It's a lot. Each of us holds so much, and it feels relaxing. It feels easeful. Just the idea that I can be more than one thing simultaneously. And so when I open up to that and say, well, if I can be more than one thing, then I can be more than two. And then when you start doing the work, you're like, oh, I might be hundreds of things, and then there's like a playful sort of curiosity about, oh, the part of me that can be really demanding, part of me that can be really easygoing, the part of me that can be like super like punctual and like rigid with time, which can serve and has served me, and the part of me that's like, yeah, like I don't need a plan today. Like they can all be the equal parts of me. Maybe not equal in the sense that like each has the same amount of me, but that like that they're all equally valid in like the landscape of my person. And I think our world would benefit if we could have that conversation. Oh, so then when someone meets me, when someone meets me, I can be like, rather than like that person's like an asshole, I could say, oh, maybe I'm meeting the really tired part of them. The
Mhm,
really, that doesn't mean that we're going to excuse bad behavior, obviously, but
mhm.
I could have some awareness around, oh, well, I've been tired too. Have I ever spoken like that to someone? Maybe I have. I hope not. But like it just all becomes like it can soften us and soften us and soften us.
Yeah.
So when we take this away, this idea of like how many parts, so okay, so to our listeners,
Mhm.
how many parts of yourself are you aware of? Are there any that you're not aware of? And if so, can you start to like shine the light of awareness on it and start to look around?
Beautifully
Yeah,
said. Beautifully said. We can be
absolutely.
we can be many things, and those things can come into our lives and be a part of our lives at certain times, and we can hold them all together. Some will play a bigger role at certain times than others. Some of them will evolve. Also, the concept of giving ourselves grace,
Mhm,
that that director that you referenced earlier can change.
mhm,
That director will not always be the same director. And you can hold the director and the cast at the same time, right? There's so many things that we can do with that. Just like giving the grace and the invitation that you so beautifully invited folks into of like, hey, can you like bring awareness to other parts of you that you may not be aware of? And this is my prayer for everyone is like, can you do that before it causes too much pain?
can we share a story?
Yes.
Okay. So just last night, Eric and I were on our way home from retreat, 7 days, 6 nights, men's work retreat, like intense embodiment practice and, all kinds of stuff. And we leave retreat, we get into airports, we're traveling, and we had a moment of tension because there was a part of you that was trying to take care of me or us. There was a part of you that was hungry. There was a part of you that wasn't feeling heard. There were all these parts happening simultaneously. Luckily, we had tools and we just came out of so we had like the most men's worky conversation about it. But in part recognizing part of what you without realizing it, you said like, okay, well, this I was trying to do this. That was one part. I'm hungry. That's another part. And it allowed us to meet it without being like, why are you, why are you some judgment about being anything. And I think that that's a great invitation for everyone listening. How many parts
Yeah,
are operating at one time? And if
you,
you understand it, is there softness to it?
I'm with you 100%. Once we can start to separate, and I'd invite us all to start using the language of a part of me, because I'd invite in exactly what you mentioned, Tim,
Mm,
softening a part of me. And when we can mastery of part in my world is when I can honor the part of them as well. So it's not just self-led, it's firstly self-led. But what I loved you sharing, Tim, is the other, a part of them. Oh, that's that angry part. That's the frustrated part. That's the shameful part. That's the excited part. And when we can honor the part in them, then it means we've done it, the parts work within us as we can see ourselves. And there's beauty in that landscape.
mm, mm. I have 100 more examples, but I feel like this is,
We have covered
yeah.
a lot of ground today. We To just go to the skiing analogy, right? Like we are carving paths through our lives, and we have been. And there are different paths that have certain different purposes and get us to different destinations. And we have different outfits that we put on for certain paths and different times and areas that we go to. And we really want to explore other paths that, if that path keeps leading us to this place that we don't love or that isn't serving us, like we really do want to explore different paths, and we
Is
really
it
hope
serving
this
us?
is serving us.
Yeah.
And we are really hoping that we do not have to get into a skiing accident and sprain an ankle to then have all that healing be done, through that painful process. But sometimes that's what's got to happen. Right? Sometimes we got to sprain the ankle and be like, oh, well, that path.
Well,
Can't go down that path anymore.
Mel Robbins was
Yeah.
talking about this, like giving people the dignity of their experience. And as you were talking about, Tim, this idea that it's often from that place where people are going to initiate the change in their life that leads to exactly where they want to be. And without it, we one might be comfortable staying exactly where we are. So, this isn't an advocation of pain, but a recognition that pain can be a signal that draws our attention to, well, what isn't serving me and what might I want to do differently? Yeah.
Be the teacher. So, uh, we are all things. You are all things. I am all things. You are all things. And right
Yes.
now, I am also complete. And I want to check in with the two of you. There's anything else to mention or incorporate into this conversation, I'll go to each of you. Tim Bish,
I feel complete.
Tim Neal.
Yeah, I'm complete too. It's just been an absolute joy and honor to be here with you both. I really appreciate it, and both of you as men. And I really hope that there's value in this conversation for whoever's listening. Thank you.
I'm going to take a quick moment to acknowledge I've been so fortunate to have so many brothers and teachers on this podcast. Tim Neal is a man that I met in my very first men's container shortly after pandemic in early
Mm,
2020. I think maybe that program started in April or May. I can't quite remember, but
mm,
and you've been a regular and consistent and steady part of my life since then. I am so grateful for you. The world is a better place because you're in it doing the work that you're doing. You show up powerfully. Tim has his own brotherhood community, online men's groups, and is steeped and in this work for the betterment of our humanity and the planet. And I am inspired by you. So thank you for coming, because the mission of this podcast is to bring this work and to help, anyone who wants to be living more authentically, more fully engaged to do that and to have resources. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude that we have you here and hopefully have you back many times if you're willing. But I love you. I love you from the bottom of my heart.
oh, thank you, man. So gratefully received. I love you too, and I've loved our journey of the last 5 years or so. Just and working together. And I remember back to that first container. It was transformational. So yeah, you're a blessing in my life. Thank you so much, Tim. And it's
Mm.
been awesome, really awesome meeting you too, Eric. Thank you.
Well, enjoyed this and deep appreciation all around. Tim, will you take us out, please?
So, well, let's close our eyes. Take a deep inhale through the nose. Gentle exhale through the mouth. Ah. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude that we now release the archetypes and the spirits that we called in, with appreciation and gratitude for any insights, awarenesses, understandings that we may have gained. And as everyone leaves the circle, I wish you all safety, community, brotherhood, and love. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.